Hi, this is George from Deafheaven, and you're live in Limbo.
This is Live in Limbo. I'm Andreas Babiolakis, here for the second time with George Clarke of Deafheaven. A year since I saw you last here at the Opera House.
Yeah.
How's it been?
It's been good. It's been a very busy year trying to get that record put together and now trying to promote it and tour and looking forward to the next year playing shows. And it's good to be back in Toronto.
Speaking of this new record, actually, the last time you were here, I was actually asking you all of these questions, and you had like this tightly knit box of surprises you were waiting to unleash, and it's finally come out. It's New Bermuda. It came out a few months ago, and it's done just as Sunbather did, highly successfully. So well done yet again. And what's it been like at your end? Like, how is this new child of yours and the rest of the band members? How's it been?
It's good. I mean, it's really fun being able to play the new songs live. I think it creates a different energy than what playing the Sunbather album was like, just because the songs are on this record are a bit different sonically than the last one. Other than that, it's everything's cool. I mean, I just take it all in stride, you know. I don't pay too much attention to good reviews and bad reviews and things like that. What's more important for me is just getting to do what we're doing right now. You know, taking out a couple of amazing bands and playing the record for people that want to hear it.
Now, you've mentioned the bands that you're touring with, and you always have such a variety of bands that you've worked with. I mean, I remember No Joy was opening for you once, actually, and you just have like a huge eclectic variety, as I said. I mean, you have like indie, you have noise, all across the board. I mean, how does the piecing together of the lineup come to fruition?
Carrie and I just talk about it. We talk about bands that we have been listening to, or bands that have exciting new records out, or bands we've been fans of for a long time. And that's basically about it. Sorry, this happened last time. Soundcheck.
It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just bands we like to play with, and we're lucky enough to be in a position to where I think we can kind of choose a variety of bands given the way that our music sounds, and we're lucky that people have said yes and agreed to do the tours with us. So it's always really cool.
Now, you bring up your own music and your own influences, and I remember last time you brought out like a huge array of stuff you were listening to, which it ranged from, you know, metal to, you know, Rye and How to Dress Well. Listening to New Bermuda, which is your newest album, I don't know if I'm alone in saying this, but it definitely feels like your most inspired album, with the amount of influences that seem to kind of leak their way into the music. Would I be right in saying that, or?
I mean, I think that we're always trying to put our best foot forward and write songs that we feel good about. I mean, that's the thing about this band, and the thing, you know, the idea of being, you know, built up by certain people and really torn down by others, is that I think a lot of people lose sight of the fact that it's just songs. You know, it's just us getting together and just jamming and writing things that we find to be interesting or just cool sounding. Anyway, and I think that because we had the five guys this time around, that kind of creative atmosphere really pushed that idea that I just said, which is like it's just people in a room enjoying themselves, and perhaps that's the reason why you may feel that way, is just because we were all in a pretty good headspace when we were coming together, and we were actually enjoying writing the record. And so yeah, it came together really smoothly.
You seem to have answered a few things I was actually going to ask, including the fact that this is the first album with the current lineup, and it's not just a project of yours and Carrie's. And you briefly touched upon the songwriting process there, where it's more about the jamming and the ideas kind of spilling into this collective pot. And you did bring up the fact that it is enjoyable, or more enjoyable release. Having said that, would you consider New Bermuda a more enjoyable album? Because in a sense, it's still a bit of a catharsis that Sunbather was.
Yeah. I mean, the thematically, I think the record's very dark. I think that the record focuses a lot on depression and such. So the music itself, yes, is still very cathartic. It's intended to be emotional. It's intended to be, grandiose, I guess, in that way. But to compare the two, it for me, I can't. I mean, I think that they're two very different records. I think that we definitely retained our sound and just pushed it slightly in different directions this time, and I think that's kind of the goal for every release, to hone in on but as well to hone in on a sound, but advance it and tweak it, as we go along.
And that's definitely noticeable with New Bermuda, because while Sunbather delved a little bit more into the shoegaze, dream poppy walls of sound, I find New Bermuda almost inspired by, and correct me if I'm wrong, groups like maybe, Sigur Rós, or even on a song like Gifts from the Earth. It's almost like the Kira Smiths inspired. What is that kind of the avenue you were going towards? Because these are different aspects of, as you said, of what depression can mean musically.
Yeah, I mean, partially. I mean, The Cure, 100%. That's I feel like it's always been an influence on our music. I think we definitely pushed that a little bit more this time. I think that the songs are just a little more tightly written, and I think that we wanted to focus on, attempting to do a catchy part or a hook, as opposed to a lot of space. They just came out the way they did. Honestly, there's not a whole lot of science behind it. We just do our best to create something that has flow and remains interesting, I guess, throughout.
Now, like your previous releases, there is a large sense of unity on New Bermuda. Would you consider it as big of a conceptual album as Sunbather might have been in terms of lyricism or themes?
Absolutely. I mean, between the music itself and the cover art and the lyrics and the themes, it's all one very complete package. I think we've always written albums, things that are best listened to in a full sitting. And so we just kind of continued with that this time around.
I know you said that there was a lot more of a creative process with the full band this time around, but where did something like New Bermuda start from? Because I remember last time when we talked, you said you had a brief idea. You didn't know where you were going to go with it, but where did that spark come from now that the release is here and it could be talked about?
I mean, Carrie is still the primary songwriter. Usually he'll like we often have conversations about how we want the sound to go, or I mean, just listening to records and hearing a riff and being like, man, like if we could do something like that in our fashion, I think that would add a lot to it. We were listening to a lot of metal that we like grew up on and such, and so we were. There's a lot of discussion about how to inject that into what we do and not make it sound awkward and hopefully sound interesting. But other than that, I mean, he's the primary guy. And then he brings all the ideas to the band. We talk about them, or if we just like them off the bat, we'll just learn them real quick and expand on them. And Shiv will come up with a guitar lead, or Dan will have an interesting like drum fill, or just we start adding all the little bits in to kind of to flesh out the skeleton, I guess. And that's just how it goes. But in fleshing it out, I mean, that is, I mean, there's always a certain stress related, but it was also fun because we all got to be together, and it was cool writing like that, as opposed to Carrie and I just sweating in our apartment, not knowing really what to do. It was great.
It's interesting that you mentioned the throwing back to metal, which brought you and Carrie together in the first place in high school. Because on New Bermuda, you notice a lot of that. Like, it's very tightly knit with its its metal riffing and the drumming and the precision. As you said, it doesn't leave a lot of room for space. Do you think with subsequent releases that this is something that you might try and rediscover, let's say, as opposed to moving forward, but seeing what you could do with what you previously were working with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about this band is that we kind of have the liberty to go in any direction, I feel like, anyway. I feel like it wouldn't be entirely shocking if we wrote 60 minutes of soft, pretty clean guitar, and I think that it wouldn't be shocking if we eliminated all that and went more into like a Black and Death thing, or anything. I mean, and who knows? I will say this, that we have not given two thoughts to new material at this point. I think our headspace is very much into the record. So we'll see.
Sounds good to me. Now, you're finally touring this new album, and I've seen you tour Sunbather maybe 3 times previously in Toronto anyways. And you actually just did NXNE the last time you were here. I mean, how did that go? You were up at like 1 a.m. in like a really tiny club. It was probably your most explosive set that I've seen personally so far. I mean,
it was crazy. Yeah.
It was insane. I mean, what was that like for you?
It was great. It was great. I mean, the crowd here is always amazing, always high energy. I think because that was a bit more intimate and later, all those qualities really heightened. It was us and Cold Cave,
yes,
which was cool in itself. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing about this tour, is that we toured off Sunbather for so long, and we played the same set for a really long time, and it was always fun, but that there can be a bit monotony in that. So that's what makes coming to Toronto this time all the more exciting, because we're able to play these new songs and elicit hopefully the same reaction as we usually get here. Be cool.
No, that's going to be really exciting, which I guess to make things a little bit more casual and go off topic a little bit, it's actually November 1st. Did you and the bandmates do anything for Halloween last night?
We did. It was really fun. We didn't get too crazy, but we played Detroit, and we played this venue with a upstairs and downstairs, and we played on the smaller stage downstairs because upstairs was the official ICP Halloween like pro wrestling party. It was like, I think they call it JCW, like the Juggalos or whatever. Yeah. And so Violent J and I believe it's Shaggy 2 Dope,
something like that.
Yeah. They were hosting it on stage, and there was like a huge wrestling ring, and it was just like right in the middle of this like bar venue. It was cool. I mean, we had a fun time. We were like screaming at the wrestlers, and it was very theatrical, and we didn't stay for too long because we needed to get some rest, but it was definitely one of the more, or will end up being one of the more memorable Halloweens I think that I've had.
Is wrestling something that you and the other guys are even into, or is that just like, hey, we're here, why not?
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, but I haven't watched it in so long, but I mean, that's an opportunity that you can't really miss, I think.
Now, in terms of things that you are into, I remember last time you gave us probably the biggest catalog when I asked you, like, what have you been listening to lately? I know your choices now might be a little bit skewed, maybe because you've been working heavily on the newest album, but can we get George Clarke's albums of the year so far? Because again, you gave us quite a few to listen to.
Yeah. That's always kind of hard for me. Albums of the year, albums I really have been listening to a lot or love. Let me think. The new Cruciamentum record, I've talked about a lot this year. I really, really love that release. The new Locrian, the Sufjan Stevens that came out this year. The Future record that came out this year. DS2. I'm trying to think. Anytime I get this question, my brain always just like snaps off. And for the whole first half of the year, we were like working on stuff. The new Jenny Haval record is really good. Yeah. We'll stop there. There's a select few records. And I know right when we get off camera, and I'm gonna be like sitting around, I'm gonna like look at my phone and be like, oh, yeah, like I listen to this album every day, and I wouldn't have mentioned it.
Of course, a new Godspeed. What was that when I was being asked this, right?
Or the new Royal Headache record is really good. It goes on and on. I'm just trying to think about things that I've been listening to lately, but it escapes me for the most part.
It's all good, but having said that, actually, what I didn't actually ask last time, clearly there's a lot more than just a musical influence within Deafheaven, let's say. Is there stuff that you guys are watching in the tour bus on the road? Is there something that like gets you in the mood creatively, maybe cinematically, novels?
I think it's pretty easy to find inspiration anywhere. When it comes to like watching stuff in the van, most of the time we either opt for like something mindless or like campy. I don't know. We watched Fright Night, which is always good. What else did we watch? We watched Saw. I mean, a lot of tour is just kind of shutting your mind off. So when it comes to that, no, we don't really go for the highbrow movie choice in the van.
But outside of the tour bus, maybe was that something you would look into, or?
Yeah, I mean, when it strikes me, nothing off the top of my head, but I mean, it happens all the time. It just either I mean, it can be a book, or it can be a movie, or it can simply be just walking around different neighborhoods, different cities, looking at different people, seeing the way people live. I mean, that's one of the funnest parts about tour, I think. There's always this like large downtime, and so I just take strolls, get coffee, people watch, just observe, enjoy the weather, think about my life and this person's life, and I'm always wondering like what people do for a living. So for some reason, that like always is one of the first thoughts that comes to my head when I'm watching someone and wondering like what their family's like, and I consider that actually the most inspirational thing that happens with me.
I guess I'll wrap it up on that question, because you raise an interesting point where I find that Deafheaven, not just with your fan base, but lyrically, is very much about everyday living and just everyday normalcy and the problems that everyday people have to cope with. Now, because a lot of people have found, like I said, a catharsis through your music, especially, with like the most recent 2 albums, do you find that you end up writing for them in a sense, like you or Carrie, or is it still very much for yourselves?
It's definitely for ourselves. I mean, everything that I write about is very direct, very personal. I think that, if anything, being that personal, and you are right about the idea of writing about everyday life and writing about feeling mixed emotions about certain different things, and I think people relate to that idea a lot, all the personal conflicts that one has pertaining to something in their life, whether it be a family member or a romantic relationship or a living situation, and because I'm just a normal person also, or just a person. I mean, not even a normal person. Maybe that's what makes it relatable. I don't really know. But I think it's cool that people respond to what we do in an emotional, open way.
Well, that's a great way to wrap things up because New Bermuda, like some made there, was widely acclaimed. And again, congratulations on your success. And it's way too soon, but I can't wait to see what you guys pull out next.